Good evening, guys. Engineer Pat 5290 coming to you with the March Q&A responses. I've looked at these questions that have come in, and they're very creative as always, guys. Keep on the creativity, guys. I love creativity when it comes to these Q&As. So, without further ado, we're going to go right into it with Reading Rails. Kicks it off. Great to see you, man. I'm glad to see a lot of the returning users have come in. In your opinion, what do you think NS will do for their 40th anniversary? I don't know. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what that's going to bring. Now, what do you like with your pork chops? Now, this is pretty good. Mashed potatoes, green beans, sometimes rice. But I love my pork chops grilled with seasoning, and sometimes I will eat them fried. When you have fried pork chops with fried apples and green beans, so daggone good. Have you seen a GECX Tier 4 locomotive, the demonstrators? No, I haven't. Have you ever done a funny prank on your mom and dad? Oh man, I can tell you a scrapbook full of stories. I have played so many tricks with my mom and dad. I have scared my mom sometimes when I come in the house. I think she's asleep, and I scared her not too long ago. I just busted out laughing, and I said to myself, I couldn't help it. Do you like the ACL 42s? To me, it's another locomotive, but I like the Genesis better. Um, if you could go back to any fallen railroad or era, where would you go? Really creative question. Um, Obviously, the ATSF, the Southern, Conrail, uh, Norfolk and Western, and even there was another one I was going to mention too. The Southern Pacific. Uh, I wouldn't mind seeing those again. There's a lot of railroads I wish I was. I mean, I really wish would come back, but only the history of it remains now. Um, 160 or 301. Are you referring to the Amtrak engines? Um, I do like the 160. The 160 they did pretty well with uh, the Phase 3 Dash 8 scheme, but to me it looks better on a Dash 8. One of the most unique paint schemes of Amtrak is the number 100, the Midnight Blue, which is one of my favorites. It's the most unique. And the next most unique is the 203, which is the Operation Lifesaver Genesis. I'm finally glad Amtrak did one of those because they're one of the very few railroads that didn't even have one. I know Norfolk Southern's done some, CSX has done some, CN I think has done some too. There's a bunch of other railroads that have done those in the past, but Amtrak finally did one. I was really glad. Favorite BC rail scheme? The older one was the green. You had the red, white, and blue, and also the blue and white. I have seen the blue and white on 4652. It's still most of it's original on that locomotive. I got that when I was in college. And the red, white, and blue was unique. It really looked good on the SD 40-2. And greatly appreciate you sending prayers for Joseph Blackwell, who passed on. Yeah, I was informed about that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions as always. Um, Beeline Service and Trainman 1993 are the next two users. Great to see you guys on here. Um, Nathan Airchime or the Leslies. I like both of them. The Reading Tier 1 or Pennsylvania's T1 look better in the Reading paint scheme. Reading Crusader or the Dreyfus Hudson. I like the T1 better for the Reading, but I've always been a fan of the Dreyfus Hudson designed by Mr. Henry Dreyfus. Leslie S5T or an old cast P5, I love both of them. And diesel or steam, I like variances of both. So thank you, sir, for your questions. And Trainman 1993, that's Matt. He comes in with more questions. Great to see you, man. The Pennsylvania's K4 or the nickel plate 765. I'm more familiar with the NKP 765. SD45 or the C30-7, SD45. The SP or the BN. Out of both sides, I prefer the Southern Pacific because of their paint scheme. I've always loved the Southern Pacific paint scheme with the Roman numeral scheme and the bloody red nose. I've always loved the SP scheme. And of course, the daylight scheme. And plus, they were bought by Union Pacific the year I was born, 1996. Um, Favorite thing about Hershey's candy? Ooh, a sweet question, quote unquote, sweet question, referring to sweets as in candy. I love it. Um, I like Hershey's just because I love it because of the name, and they produce a lot of my favorite chocolate. Hershey's cookies and cream, which is the white chocolate with chocolate chips. Oh boy, that's good. Um, I'm trying to think. They do the Hershey's Kisses, Hershey's Milk Chocolate. Mr. Goodbar is another one of my favorites. I love a lot of Hershey's products, okay? I love Hershey's products. Have you ever visited Hocking Valley Scenic Railroad? No, I haven't. But I would definitely look that one up as well and do a little homework on that. So thank you, sir, for your questions. Stephen KC Railfan comes back for more. Great to see you, Steve. Which ATS and paint scheme looked the best on an F7? Red and silver for the win. You think NS should have OLS schemes on the AC44 C6Ms? I wouldn't mind seeing them because they did a few of the Dash 9s in the Operation Lifesaver paint schemes. I wouldn't mind seeing them do some of those. Thoughts on the Amtrak and Mark HHP8s? That was a really unique locomotive, but from what I heard, they were mechanical nightmares for Amtrak and Mark, I think. And Amtrak and Mark, I think, retired most of their fleet, but I think they still keep a few of those running. So definitely a unique locomotive for sure because they modeled that after the Acela. So that was the AEM7 version of the Acela. So it was basically the Acela Express and the AEM7 basically put together. So really unique design by Bombardier. The Monon or the Reading Railroad. The Monon was actually a railroad that nobody talks about. That was the Hoosier line, and that was a really unique railroad in my book. And of course, the Reading, everybody knows B-line service. The Alco S2 or the RS3, RS3 on that one. NS 8114 or the 8102. 8114 because it has a unique paint scheme. Now the Sioux line or the Erie Lackawanna. I'm going to have to pull the Sioux line on this one because Sioux line had a pretty cool paint scheme. Of the older scheme was the best one with the white rear, the red nose, and the black lettering on the sides, and Sioux line stamped in white on the nose. I've always loved that paint scheme. Erie Lackawanna was good because they took the paint scheme from the Lackawanna Railroad, the Delaware Lackawanna Western, and they had really good paint scheme on the SD45. Ice cream or popsicles? Gotta go with ice cream. I had plenty of popsicles as a kid, but I've always preferred ice cream. Thoughts on Quick Trip? It must be a gas station chain. I've actually never heard of Quick Trip. I'll look into that. Favorite Amtrak passenger cars? I've always liked the Amfleets. Amfleet 1s, Amfleet 2s. I think there are Amfleet 3s as well. But I've always liked those with the stainless steel look. Excuse me, and I love the way they lit up at night, especially when the lights are beaming down on the metal. It looks so pretty. Um, PRT ones or the UPA big boy for the win. What is the rarest rolling stock you've seen in person? The Mcleod River Railroad Company boxcar. I have one in N scale and I have seen one in real life. That's a railroad that pretty much almost no one talks about. I gotta do a little bit more research on them, but that's one of the rarest cars I've seen. The C39-8 or the SD50, SD50 because it's EMD obviously, but the C39-7 had a really unique look. Last time you saw a leasing unit? Oh gosh, that's probably been back since I was in college. Man, it's been a long time since I've seen a leasing unit. No, wait a minute, I do take that back. There was some ex leasers that were on NS at one point. I did happen to see a few leasers at one point. Um, so I do take that back. I do apologize. Mint chocolate chip or cookies and cream ice cream. Oh, cookies and cream ice cream. Oh, I could eat that right now. Thoughts on the 203, the Operation Lifesaver engine for Amtrak? I'm really glad they did one. And Amtrak had never done one. I'm really glad they did one. Because to me, it looks like a bumblebee. I do love that locomotive. Um, Thoughts on the gong bell and the CNW EMDs? That was a unique aspect of the CNW. I was really surprised they went with that over a regular standard EMD brass bell. But that was a unique aspect for the CNW. Favorite gummy candies? Ooh, gummy candies. I love gummy candies. I love sour gummy worms and I love gummy bears. I will eat those like crazy. Oh, I love them. I haven't had them in years. Have you ever visited the Strasbourg model train shop? I can't recall, but I think I did. I know the Choo Choo Barn is up that way in Strasbourg as well, and that layout was featured in I Love Toy Trains. So, um, I think I went in there, but I just can't remember. Now, least favorite William Hanna, Tom and Jerry episodes. Um, Blues Cat Blues was really sad. Top Watchers was not really my favorite, but there were a lot of the ones by Hanna Barbera that were good, and the original ones, produced in 1945 and went through the 50s a little bit, were produced by Mr. Fred Quimby. Scott Bradley did the music, and Fred Quimby did the production. The ones that were done in the 70s were not as good as the originals. So, anyway, thank you, Steve, for your questions. And Take Username comes back with a very nice list of questions. Thank you very much. And we will pick it up right there with Droopy Diesel for part two. Glad this is part two, guys. Glad part two coming up. And let me tell you, keep the questions coming for April. I'll see you guys in part two momentarily. All right, guys, see you shortly.